Oh, hang on, I've got to find the keypad to do that. Got it, Ash.
That's right.
There
Hello.
we go.
All right. First of all, what I'd like to do is an acknowledgement of country, and then I'll ask you to introduce yourselves. So I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land in which we meet today, and I would like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I extend my respect to you ladies being here today, and I acknowledge that we're on cross country as we conduct business. Can I get you just to quickly introduce yourselves, please?
Hi guys, my name's Rhiannon. I'm one of the Aboriginal Student Support Officers here at Mundani Ballock under Victoria University. I'm a proud Gunditjmara woman, and this is my colleague.
Hi everybody, my name is Irene Sazdov. I'm the Aboriginal Student Employment Alumni Officer. Previously, I was in PNC, so I'm in Mundani. How long have I been here now? A year and a half. So I work with grad students, placing them into workforce.
Nice work. All right. So part of a number of community services deliveries, we have a unit which, talks about Aboriginal experiences. And we've got some questions for you today, which will be part of an assessment for our students in mental health and other community services deliveries in their training package. So we're aware that sometimes experiences from different cultures, have different exposures in a number of different systems. And I guess what we're going to be looking a little bit at today is primarily about Aboriginal experiences within the workplace. So the first question that I've got for you both, and I'm more than happy for both of you to answer this question so that you can add your own experiences to this, is can you tell us a little bit about your experiences with employment as an Aboriginal person?
I personally, within this area, we must have made a few notes in regards to some of these questions. These challenges can include racism, discrimination, lack of access to education, training opportunities, and can also be limited to representation in leadership roles.
Yeah.
Personally, within my experiences within employment, I've worked in a lot of roles and never disclosed that I've had an Indigenous background in fear of perhaps some sort of stigma that might come with that. Once you're comfortable within that workplace, then you might open up and share. But now that I'm coming of age and maturing, I think, no, stuff you. I'm telling you, I'm Aboriginal from the get-go, and I want that respect and the level of respect that I deserve on that.
Do you think some of that experience, because I'm just curious, do you think some of that experience is potentially from your exposure going through formal education like primary school and high school, and how Aboriginals were viewed in
Most definitely, because if I identified to friends within school groups as a young child or a teenager, I would be then questioned in regards to my skin colour. But I live in a house. That was the one question I always scratched my head about, why they thought Aboriginal people never lived in houses. I mean, it's generational, so it differs from each generation as we move forward. And it hopefully, I would like to think that the younger generations would have a more positive experience as we are moving forward. But I think Irene would be able to, having the employment is her background, she would have many stories and examples that she could share in this area.
I was always identified as Aboriginal. I worked for large companies previously, organisation, BHP, Shell, a lot of refinery companies, and I remember working for the airlines. And my grandmother passed away, and I've got her back then. There was telexes and faxes, and I don't know the young ones if they know what telexes are and faxes these days. But I remember getting a telex from an Aboriginal organisation to verify that my grandmother passed away, and the manager come out. They said, "Oh, why did this come through? Who's it for?" And I said, "Whose name has it on it?" And they go, "It's got your name, but it's got an Aboriginal organisation." I said, "Oh, that's me." And he looked at me up and down, and he goes, "But it's an Aboriginal organisation. Is where your grandmother's getting buried or something, And I said, "Yeah, I have to go back home. That's just to notify." So that stigma, like Rhiannon said, that actually impacted me, because I never identified. Yes, I identified in the head office, but I didn't have to walk around with imprinted in my forehead.
Yeah, we don't have a sign on our
You know,
heads.
on our
Yeah.
heads that we're Aboriginal. And I'm sure that other nationalities don't have signs, you know, they're Greek, ethnic, because I class myself as a Wogorigine. So, it's
Oh, I love that.
So, you know, talk about diversity, you know, we have in my family, I've got 8 aunties. 8 aunties are married to 8 different nationalities. And the ones that we didn't have, that's why my name's Sazdolf. And the ones we didn't have, our first cousins married into. But employment is it's very hard. You know, we don't have, to get an Aboriginal into a leadership role, it's very difficult. We get, oh, did you get the role because you're Aboriginal? Oh, you only got this role. So I don't believe personally in identified roles, Aboriginal identified roles, because I've got a niece who's doctor at North Shore Hospital. And I said to my niece, Francesca, have you identified that you're Aboriginal? She goes, no, I aren't. I said, oh my God, why not? You know, like I was discussing that she didn't. She goes, because I don't want them to say that I got the job. She works in the emergency department, that I got the job being Aboriginal. But I said, but you know, you need to know how to sew up people and cut people, and she's in the emergency ward.
Yeah.
And I said, so you wouldn't have got your job because you're Aboriginal. She goes, when the timing's right, I will let them know that I'm Aboriginal. I'm not denying it. But, you know, at this stage, I'm not ready to disclose that. So she, in her head, she's still got the theory, because what we had to go through, we got the role because there was an identified position. We only got not of our capabilities, but of our identity. That makes sense.
Which, going further on that, here's my curiosity, coming from previously working in disability employment services, I'm aware that the government sometimes develops this systemic imbalance where they will offer more money for an Aboriginal person to be employed sometimes. And I wonder whether that creates some of this feeling that, you know, I only got it because I'm an Aboriginal person, because, you know, the government's actually going to pay more for me to become employed in that sense. Do you think that contributes to it?
I don't think that contributes to it, but people have got to understand why there's extra funding contributed. It's working with one Aboriginal person, it's like working with 10 non-Aboriginal person, because first of all, they cause the trauma. So it's caused by the intergenerational trauma.
Yep.
So that's why we have this trauma impacted on us. And it takes about 7 generations for our trauma to go. But our kids still today are getting removed for no reason at all.
Yeah.
You know, so when are we supposed to, I'm like on my about 3rd generation of trauma.
Yeah.
So there's other people, you know, so when is it going to stop? By the time I get to the 7th, there's still kids getting removed to this day, and there's other impacted trauma on us.
There is, absolutely. So leading from that, then what does cultural safety within the workplace actually look like? Because we see that they write lots of policies, they have, you know, all of these really flash things, but my curiosity is that actually really what happens?
In cultural safety, I don't believe cultural safety sometimes is impacted in workplaces. I don't think it's safe in workplaces. I think it's just policy written up by a white man.
Yep.
And it's not followed through.
And perhaps with an Indigenous input, but which isn't always taken on board as well.
No, that's right. Yeah.
So we ask for our experiences and it's great doing something like this, because we know moving forward we're helping educate others in regards to some our stepping stones and brick walls that might appear in our journeys.
Yep.
But when it comes to cultural safety, it's for me to feel culturally safe within an environment, I need to be able to bring my whole self to work.
Yeah.
Not leave a part of me at home. Leaving that part of me at home, therefore, means that I'm not feeling culturally safe within that workplace, because I felt that I couldn't disclose, or this is my first workplace where I'm actually wearing Indigenous printed clothing, and I'm wearing it proudly.
Yeah.
Working in other institutes and other organisations that I've worked at across the years, I've worked in more formal wear, slacks and tops, and that's the way I thought I had to present myself. But here I feel like I can bring my whole self, as I'm saying, where in other workplaces where I haven't felt that. It might come over time, but there's certain places where we can enter and we can feel that instantly. There's other places we can enter, and it's not just in regards to the workplace. Just recently, I had to go and do 2 consultations with dental surgeons. The first dentist I walked into, I sat down, I didn't feel comfortable at all. The environment, there was no friendly face greeting me. It was like, oh, okay, yep, you got an appointment, sit down. The second one I went to, the first thing I seen upon entry was an Indigenous print on the wall. That
Awesome.
probably helped.
Yeah.
I had smiling staff. I identified, so that was also recognised.
Yeah.
And I think, therefore, the respect then come from that. And that's what we look for that safe environment, and looking for that respect. People being open-minded about the diversity of today's world.
Yes.
It's not like we woke up this morning and Australia's now become multicultural. It's always been
it has.
multicultural. So why is it taking us so long to make everybody feel comfortable within the spaces that they fit?
No, absolutely. So
I think a lot of it comes, again, we need to then educate, and this is part of why we're happy to do this.
I always put it back to them. What does cultural safety mean to them? We know what it means to us. We want, like Rhiannon said earlier on, the respect. We don't want to be fed with a golden spoon. We're no different to anybody else. We bleed red like everybody else.
Yep.
We have the same organs like everybody else in our bodies. We're not aliens. We're not different people. But, what does cultural safety mean to non-Aboriginal people? My question is, we know what it is. So why do we get
reverse
asked?
that?
Reverse that. And why do we get asked, what is cultural safety? Well, you think about it.
What does it mean to you?
And people putting us into diversity inclusion, I'm totally against that. Australian Aboriginal people, they're multicultural, but Australian, how can I say, we're not Irish, we're not English, and Scottish or many other countries, but a lot of people put us in that diversity inclusion. Why do they do that? We have a standalone identity. We're a whole prescription of, I've got something that I've written here and I always share. Aboriginal culture is not a migrant culture, but an Aboriginal people embrace and welcome the diversity of migrant cultures, which now make up and contribute a positive way to Australian society.
Yep.
And I'm a strong believer of that because, yes, we respect every single culture that comes in. And going back to cultural safety, don't put it on us. You think about what's required.
Yeah, absolutely. So what could be improved? So where it sounds like organisations need to take more responsibility for developing some level of safety is what I'm hearing from that. And so I'm just wondering, what are some of your bias experiences and how could they be improved as such? What could we do to change that?
Like Rhiannon said, put some flags around, put a welcoming environment, acknowledgement, have some posters or something, pamphlets, have
something of familiar.
Have an Aboriginal worker there. I mean, I went to Vic Roads one day and somebody was wearing an Aboriginal flag on their uniform, and I said, "Oh, you wouldn't be Aboriginal by any chance?" Because yes, I am. I said, "So am I." So I just walked in really proud,
awesome.
And that was at Vic Roads. But that was just like little thing, and she had an Aboriginal flag. Like when I worked for the airlines, people had other languages that they spoke, so they had their flag. So we knew straight away that they spoke another language, and we knew which language. So I'm thinking it's really like. When I delivered cultural awareness here with the facilitator, with Jimmy Kyle, I was giving out little flags to our staff when I was in People and Culture. And I said, I want you to wear it, but I want you to wear it with pride because you share the Mother Earth with us. You are. So you're part of this,
Yeah, definitely. And I'd like to further add to that I think cultural awareness and education, I think ignorance comes from lack of. So if we could eliminate that ignorance within the workplace and everybody, like Irene just said, we all bleed red, and at the end of the day, we're all equal. We're not looking to be put on a pedestal. We want to be treated as all others are treated within the workplace. We don't want to be shone upon because they might think that, oh, the things that are going on in our homes might be different to what, and it might impact us in the workplace. We can differentiate that, and we can come to work and put those things aside. We can put ourselves into professional settings as we are now, and
yeah,
you know, so don't second guess the person and just make presumptions based on a bias conception that people have perhaps brainwashed you with already. And from education, and then from that to support that leadership and encourage that, and also with just being, I think, the open-mindedness, being open and removing that stigma of, you know, and we all know each nationality has their own stigmas, and we know we can sometimes identify those people from those areas because of that, but they need to go, because that's what then makes us more uncomfortable. You know, how many people have come up to me and said, oh, you get extra money because you're Aboriginal. No, I don't. Tell me where this money is, because I want it. If I'm entitled to it, give me it.
I love it. Yeah. I love it.
So, yeah, and they might even take that into the workplace and think, well, because
Yes,
you're an
they do.
Aboriginal worker, are you getting more money? And these are presumptions that create unsafe environments that we don't feel comfortable in.
So taking what you guys have just said, and my next question, which is how can we work better with Aboriginal people, I guess what I'm hearing is, here's an idea, guys: get educated about what really happens to Aboriginal people, what has happened to Aboriginal people. I think that what I'm hearing is people really need to understand that truthful journey, not the rubbish that's written in books, but what's really happened.
I think you need to hear it from the horse's mouth rather than the books. And the books have been overwritten by white people. So my attitude is, you know, cultural awareness, that's always face-to-face. Always
the best way.
It's always the best way.
Yeah.
So if you have something cultural awareness, we had one, you know, here, we had excellent reviews as staff. It was for staff. It wasn't actually for students. I don't know if you, Deborah, attended.
No, I didn't go to that one. A little while, but not long enough.
So we had one here. We had one for TAFE students as well at Nicholson Street. Because I worked on Jennifer Sinclair. I don't know if you remember. Yeah.
No.
In people culture, I was on. Yeah. So we delivered one at for TAFE staff, and I think that's a starting point. And I think once you have cultural awareness sessions face to face. It makes a big difference. It makes people think. And we had people that, even students here, that weren't identifying that are Aboriginal, but there were students as staff here at VU.
Yeah.
And once we delivered those cultural awareness, they actually felt comfortable. They started identifying. They started coming out.
Yeah, that's awesome, isn't it?
I thought that was really, and they started researching on their identity. They're trying to get the information of Aboriginality. They're trying to look into their family, looking into their history, which is really, because I think Aboriginal people, we need a belonging. Everybody else has a belonging. So we need our own belonging as well.
Yeah, we've lost that sense of belonging to a country that we were actually more than belonging to.
And that's part of that generational trauma, isn't it? Where, you know, that connection, that belonging, that identity, it's all been fractured.
Yes.
Well, our history's been, you know, like you get a jigsaw puzzle, it's always ripped up and thrown up in the air, and we're still, to this day, we're still trying to put the puzzles together.
Yeah, but find those missing pieces.
There's always missing pieces that we can't put it together. You know, it's very, very for our history, and that still trying. People say to us, well, why are you different? You look around on the news and there's so many people, like what's happening in Ukraine now. Why are they're fleeing their own country? They're getting bombed. They're getting killed. Why you? Because every single country has been recognised. We haven't in our own country.
Yes.
The genocided, everything that we've been. All we asked is to be recognised.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's what the difference is. And people say, no different to Vietnam War, no different. And I said, yes, but every single country in the world has been recognised. Have we? No.
No, we were put into a category of flora and fauna. And
that's right.
Well, my mother, 5 years prior to I was born, that's when it changed. So I
Mm,
look at my mother and think, you grew up in a category of being an animal. That's
yeah,
disgusting that the world treated somebody like that.
yeah,
Well, I
yeah.
got my it's my dad.
Yeah, that's right.
This is your opinion.
But once people are educated and open to that training, they then generally tend to self-educate a little bit more. But
Mm,
it also opens up communication to ask questions that have been the unknown to those that want to question us about our culture. We're
mm,
happy to share those that want to ask the right questions to find the right, for the right reasons too,
mm,
because sometimes people are nitpicking in the questions they ask, or the way they ask them can come
yeah,
across very appropriate as well.
Not
But
only that, some people become like we give them the answers and they know our history better than us.
yeah,
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 So, and it's impossible to know. I mean, I'm Aboriginal and I only know like maybe 7% of our history.
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know that, and Gary Foley, Professor Gary Foley, I'm sure
Mm,
he'll, and there's so much history that, we've been denied to our own history.
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So it's very difficult. I think cultural awareness going back, that will improve the cultural safety,
Mm,
that will improve, so if you have cultural awareness sessions, information, so face to face, I think that has a big impact on today's society.
I
and
think so
yeah,
too. And without going into too much detail, other things can evolve from that and creating to improve by putting in policies and procedures in regards to compulsory training, at least minimal training,
yeah,
looking at diverse hiring and promotion as well. Communications and feedback is always great. Like I was saying, that it opens up communication,
mm,
but also that leaders should be leading by example and demonstrating that commitment to that, creating a culturally safe environment, not being biased in their own leadership roles. Also, celebrating diversity can be a big one as well.
mm,
Picking out, like, we did our NAIDOC event. We've got World Indigenous Day coming up soon enough.
yeah,
Little things like that, they might seem tokenistic, but they can have a big meaning if done in the right way.
yeah, yeah. That's right.
And then I think it's something that's continuously needs to be evaluated as well, because
Mm,
there's always, and we know in all areas, there's always room for improvement.
there is, yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to ask you now because I'm curious on this. We talk a lot about self-determination in Aboriginal, programs and stuff like that, and it's a very white word, isn't it? And I'm curious, So the question that I'm to ask is, how can we better support Aboriginal people with self-determination? My question to you, I think, should be more along the lines is, what is self-determination to Aboriginal people? What does it mean to you? Because I'm just, I know my very European, Anglo-Saxon definition from this word, but I think it gets lost in translation.
I think so too. I think really about that self-determination is about being recognised and respected.
Mm,
So that, and being able to, I suppose, make my own decisions based on my outcomes and what I want them to be. But the self-determination is really about that confidence. And we were talking about this in a meeting yesterday, actually, in regards to building on students' confidences and how to create that self-determination within them. And it's really about sometimes the people you surround yourself with as well, because they can rub off on us as we're learning to build up on that self-determination. But I don't know, just doing what you're doing now and listening and learning from us, definitely helps support that in its own.
Letting the Aboriginal people make their own choices, make their own, let the Aboriginal community and social, make their own cultural and economic choices.
Which then leads to some sort of...
Rather than saying, well, this is what you guys are going to do. Let Aboriginal people be their own decision makers.
Definitely.
Rather than getting told what we have to do.
And let us feel that we've taken some control of what we're doing and nobody's trained us and pushed us and guided us into a direction we never wanted to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And one of the documentaries that the students will have seen by the time they're looking at this is that David Gilpilil's Another Country, where he talks a lot about some of those Northern Territory experiences. One of his quotes, which I just love, and it's so offensive, and it is just so exaggerating of exactly what the experience is. He says, the government came along and told us we need councils. We said we didn't want councils, so they gave us councils. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just,
well, where's the self-determination in that?
And this is, isn't it? And it's just,
But
this
you
is
go
what
to a new-
happens.
You go to a site like Northern Territory, because my family's not far from there. You go to a site like that, where were the doctors? Where were the psychiatrists? Where were the psychologists? Where were the pediatricians? There was none of those, but they had the army, and they had the army in there, but they didn't have the doctors, they didn't have the psychologists, they didn't have the pediatricians, they didn't have the... So where were they? That's what my question is to the white people. Where were they? If you were so concerned about Aboriginal people and this was what's happening, why didn't you fly in all these doctors, all these pediatricians, psychiatrists, psychologists, nurses and things, rather than the army?
But they had police stations and they had prisons, but they didn't have any of the other basic health.
That's another conversation.
There's no education and there's no employment, but they built the biggest courthouse up in Alice Springs.
Oh, it's just, isn't it?
And the biggest courthouse. Oh, I was just like, my cousins were up there and they were telling me about it and they were taking photos. I'll have to get someone showing around, but it was just amazing. Like, you're thinking, hang on, what are you doing? The poverty cycle. The poverty cycle, is still, we didn't have a poverty cycle. That's what people forget.
Yeah.
So the poverty, they go, but why are you different? Because poverty was forced up on us and we can't get out of it.
Yeah.
No, that's exactly right.
It was forced. We didn't have it. People say, but, I lived in poverty and I did this and I did that and I was able to get out of it. But yes, we didn't
Aren't
have
you
it
lucky?
Yeah.
Aren't you lucky?
Aren't you lucky? Yeah.
Okay. So how can...
Going back to your question 3, we were sort of covered.
Oh, we sort of jumped to how people better support Aboriginal self-determination. Is that the question we're at now?
We're about to move into question 7.
Because we've answered a few within
that's what I thought.
one question.
And you have. So question 7, which is, and I think we've sort of touched on this a little bit by, us putting questions to you and allowing you to actually give us that feedback, which is, how can we encourage Aboriginal people to participate in program evaluation to promote inclusive practice? And I think a large part of our discussion today has been more about just ask them, really just ask and get that feedback, but document it. I think that's a big part of what's missing it. No.
So it's okay to ask questions.
Yeah.
And sometimes people might not like the answers they get, but they ask the question and we're going to be brutally honest.
Yes. Yeah. But I think, but document it, they got to be, we talk in mental health quite a bit about real choices, and it's because historically in mental health, when, doctors, especially psychiatrists, have said to clients, you've got choice of A or B and that's it. And we don't consider that to be a real choice. And I sort of think that, when we're talking about including Aboriginal people in evaluation and promoting inclusiveness, I think that, certainly get the feedback, ask the questions, but document it. Make sure it's actually considered, not just asked for. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
What could you add to that? Could you add anything else that you think should be considered?
Well, from what you're saying, that then helps build that trust and the relationship with the individual. And that's an essential part of life, building on those relationships. We need to be able to have that trust in others as well to promote that inclusive practice. And perhaps people won't share until they've built that relationship and trust.
Yeah.
The story has it what my elders have expressed to me in storylines coming down our families, etc., is a lot, and this happens still to this day up north where we're still living very traditionally. But a lot of the elders won't share the stories to those that within their own mob that they don't have a trust haven't built a trustful relationship, because the stories they hand down, they want them handed down to be worded and shared exactly how they were shared with those. I know my grandmother used to say, for example, your little brother would not be getting shared anything with because he likes to exaggerate everything he therefore shares. So he would take the story, don't let it all lie get in the way of good yarn, but that's to say about him. So my grandmother used to use him as an example to say, elders would never have shared with him because he doesn't share the way. And that's what she embedded in me to, whatever you learn, you share that word for word to how you learned it. Don't Chinese whisper and create a false acronym, that comes out the other end, but make sure that they're passed down from line to line. And that needs to be built on with trust and relationship. But involvement, like you said, the involvement of the Aboriginal people from the start. Don't just make presumptions. Ask us. Help us, let us help you, and you help us create that cultural safe environment, and etc. and things like that. But you could probably elaborate a little bit more. But
no, I totally agree. And I was just going to say, with mental health, people, what mental health, how it affects Aboriginal people might not affect somebody else. And because we're very strong in our identity and belonging. So a lot of people, if we have identity and belonging, our mental health improves. So that's another thing I was going to touch a subject as well. I know it's not part of what we were going through, but I just wanted to raise and make sure that's clear, because having that sense of belonging, like I said earlier, you have your identity, you have a belonging. You can say I, rather than, you have got, I am a warrior.
No, and so what we ask often of the mental health students is to consider that belonging, but we actually ask them to shift that to a citizenship. And then we pull apart, unpack what's the difference between belonging and a citizenship. And, it's active participation is the difference. And so what we say is we want people to have an active citizenship within the program or whatever they're doing. And sort of, so that stuff's really sitting nicely with, what we would be, which is that real choices, taking real note of the information that you get, actually applying it, not just collating but applying it.
That was going through my head. You're actually applying it. And that's the biggest thing. A lot of people can put words on paper, but are they actually actioning it or applying it within that space? So that's great that you've commented on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, so I'm going to move to the next question because it's leading in what I'm thinking in my head, which is, what are some of the experiences of Aboriginal people with other cultures? Do you think that your experiences with other cultures is sometimes a little influence of our Anglo-centric, so our westernized lack of understanding is then shared with other cultures, and so other cultures actually don't really understand you, which is probably a little bit more exaggerated because they can't get the information, they're not getting it? Or what's your experience?
I'm sorry. I find that some countries are being taught the real history of Australia. In regards to us, like there has been some changes within certain parts of the world, and I've spoken to different members. I'm a big traveller, so I've spoken to a lot of people worldwide in regards to that. But it really can depend on the individual, the community, and the history that we might share. So you put us into a room with a Holocaust victim, and we can relate. We can sit there, and that trust and respect and that building of relationships probably starts from just walking in the room without conversation said, because we've got a similarity to some of the things that we've experienced, whether it was personally, because you look at the Holocaust, they're going to have intergenerational trauma too, go through the children of those survivors.
Yes.
So we've got the ripple effects of similarities of other countries and other war-ridden countries and what they've experienced. But I think that a lot of this comes from
past
our
policy
past.
matters.
Yeah. That's what. So yeah, you can pick up from there because you know where I was going with that.
I mean, let's face it. I said you come to Australia, you get a quiz, you get a citizenship. You apply for the citizenship. There's only 1 or 2 questions on the actual citizenship about Aboriginal history and Aboriginal identity. So how's a person supposed to know our history? How's it, they're being provided information, come and live on free land, this happy place and all this, but nothing's mentioned by our history. So when you meet a person and you tell them of the history, your history, because I'm always to people throughout VU, through my whole life, my family, like I said, I've got 8 aunties, 8 different nationalities, speaking to, their family, and they said, but we never knew, nobody told us. We heard different stories in our country, and especially not so much now the migrants. There's sort of this internet, there's research, you can find out bits and pieces, but everything's, you have to go through one to get to the truth, because everything's sort of still hidden behind. But, they get told lies too. It's not their fault, people, that. And I just think when I hear some of the stories that, what they're being told, and they said, but you're not like that. And I said, well, what am I supposed to be like? That's what I mentioned. I bleed red. We have the same organs,
Yes.
And, my uncle was in jail, Aboriginal death in custody. He was 25 in Fremantle. He wrote a song, from churches to the corroborees. Doesn't matter what colour you are, you bleed red. And he wrote it, and that's a black death in custody, and he actually wrote that song. And I think, let's be honest here, they don't get much information coming to the country. There's no test, even, getting your citizenship on survival day, invasion day, whatever you want to call it. I won't call it Australia Day because Australia wasn't formed.
It's my mum's birthday.
Yeah. Mum's birthday. But, like I'm just trying to say is like, they don't have information. They should be provided with information.
Yeah.
I sit on a lot of the councils. I sit on Maribyrnong, Brimbank, who else? Melton at
Wyndham.
the moment. You're on Wyndham. Yeah. So moving Australia Day, why? Why shouldn't we give the citizenships on there? So a lot of the councils actually given them brochures now to learn about their local history.
Awesome.
Fantastic, yeah.
So that's where it goes back to.
It does.
Yeah.
But it's also, I've got a note here, and I think this is important, and this is overall for all questions that we've been answering here today, that it is important to recognise that these experiences are not just universal. They can vary greatly amongst our Aboriginal individuals and amongst our communities. And it's just like we're having a simple discussion, but it's crucial to approach these sort of discussions with a bit of respect and empathy, and willing to listen and learn from the Aboriginal people. But that comes again in hand with the question that was asked. So how we are with other people and other, if people give us that empathy, I'm not looking for somebody to come in the room and say, I'm so sorry for what we did to Australia. We're not looking for that. We just want understanding that, okay, I might feel really passionate about Invasion Day. You might look at it and think, well, I don't understand that. Well, let's have a discussion to make you understand that, rather than you just shoot me in the foot and having no empathy, no whatsoever, no willingness to understand either. So it's sort of that I agree to disagree. And we can do that in these conversations as well.
Yeah.
Don't always have to agree with one another's opinions, but it opens our mind to therefore have an understanding of others' opinions.
Yes.
And why or how we can incorporate that within workplaces, within our life set skills as well.
How many true Australians know that the Australian Constitution was signed off by the Queen Victoria, 9th of July, 1900?
Yeah.
Australia Day wasn't actually formed as Australia on the 26th of January.
Yeah.
So still is an invasion day.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's
looking for Australia Day, the Constitution was signed off by the Queen on 9th of July in 1900. So how many people, actual Australians, know that?
No, well,
You know,
they don't, do they?
The class that listens to this now does.
The many classes.
That's right. A lot of people that celebrate Australia Day. Why are you celebrating Australia Day? Because of the killings and the things?
Yeah.
Why are you celebrating that? We can have it on 9th of July as an Australia Day. That's when the actual Constitution
was signed, yeah.
signed off. And that's when it became Australia. Before that, we were states, still like Victoria, Northern Territory, and as Australia, 9th of July, 19. No.
Or if they want it to be as Aussie as possible, May the 8th, because it's like Mate Day.
I like that. I like it.
You know, that's some of the things, you know, I don't know, but, you know, it's totally, you know, going off the subject, you know.
Oh, it gives them more input.
I think it's fantastic. You know, these are things that they, you know, the students, if they get an inkling of, Google it, go and have a look, go and actually collect. Right. You know, yeah, because look, I guess the thing is that this is information that historically has not necessarily been taught in primary schools. It's not, you know, something that is part of the Here Study for Your Citizenship pack. It's not in any of that. Well, why not? And so this is a big part of truth telling and that discussion, isn't it? You know, which
it is.
Do the research, have an actual look instead of, you know, accepting what old mate Pete from down the road said, who hasn't finished high school, because that's not really okay.
I always say, instead of asking us the question, what does cultural safety mean? What does working, you know, ask yourself as a person. Ask yourself
as an individual.
As an individual, you know, look at yourself and ask, how would I like to be treated? What race where am I coming from? You know, and all this, ask yourself rather than asking, you know, because we get mentally exhausted, asked all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's just creating, you know, the trauma back for us all the time. So, you know, they write these policies, and I know a lot of councils actually that wrote RAPs up, but they haven't got them signed by Reconciliation Australia. So there were actually RAPs in place. They're signed.
Oh my God.
And they're, you know, they're sitting there. They're not signed by Reconciliation Australia. They had to rewrite them recently. I can a few councils that we're joined to, they had to rewrite them and get them re-signed. But, you know, they hide behind them. I said, you don't need a RAP, need anything. Do it because you want to do it, because you think it's the right thing to be doing.
That's exactly right, because you're treating your workplace health and safety documents a little bit differently. So you see it with the same tenacity. Absolutely.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Spot on.
So we've got probably about 4 minutes left. And so I'm just wondering what, if you can leave one thing with the students today for them to remember of, you know, what should they really take into consideration of when working with Aboriginal people?
I've got a list to leave them with.
Whether
you know, Rhiannon's a teacher.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, me and Devin's. Well, and I'm doing a bit of work in this area at the moment with all the teaching staff, so it's good. But what I think is most important, I've got a few points. Yeah. Respect and be culturally sensitive.
Yep.
Acknowledge historical content and educate if you've got blanks in those areas, and find out what you need to know to acknowledge. Seek consent and permission. And what I mean by that is just being respectful for cultural protocols. Those, we didn't show that, but you showed that respect to us by reading out the acknowledgement prior to the recording starting today. That it's those little things that help, you know. Be willing to listen and learn, be willing to collaborate and build on relationships, and be open to unlearning and relearning what you may have learned in the primary school classroom or in your high school history classes.
Yes.
Support Indigenous initiatives and commit to reconciliation, but not by putting it in paper, by actioning it.
Yeah, by doing.
That's what I'd like to leave the students with today.
What I would have, learn Aboriginal history, because there is a Black history in Australia, and that's what people don't realise, that we do have a Black history. It's very important for everybody to understand it. The quicker they learn it, and understand it and accept it, the quicker we can walk together.
Yeah.
And-
Yep.
That's what I would like to leave the students with. Marcus,
Fantastic.
Yeah, what
So-
they said.
I
And
love
I
it.
think, yeah,
Marcus, come on, you got.
yeah, I think, students should also, show their curiosity and ask questions, They might come off as sort of a bit ignorant, well, that's okay. I think asking questions, it can be a big thing. So be willing and open to learn, and yeah, that would sort of be my thing, just rushing in here.
That's all
Putting him
right.
on the spot.
So
I
a quick
know.
intro through our latecomer Marcus. He's also one of the Aboriginal Student Support Officers here in Mundani Balik. And now that you've seen our friendly face, any Indigenous students out there, or even if you're not, you just want to come and have a yarn and learn more, come and find us at Footscray Park, Building G, ground floor.
Good
Fantastic.
advertising. I didn't know that we had somebody advertising. Stop.
Might as well throw a marketing pitch in there while we're here.
Good advertising. I didn't
That
know
is
we paid you
fantastic.
for advertising.
All right, so I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you
Yep.
so much for your information, and hopefully the students will be able to, go through some of this information. Hopefully they get a little curious about some of the things that you've said,
Yeah.
and have a bit of a look
I would love to
around
meet
and-
some of them. I would love them to knock on my door and say, hey, I watched that video you were in.
Yes.
And I just wanted to ask you more about it.
Yep.
Open to that. Very open to that.
Absolutely. So I'm going to leave it there. But thank you so much for your input, and we will be able to talk a bit again soon.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Deb.
Bye.
Bye.